Okay, how's everybody doing? So, this is probably a good time to talk about this model because I'm sort of at the midway point, and if I don't spend a little time on commentary, then how else am I going to flesh out things that you don't see? Because you can't cover everything, because there's, like I've mentioned before, there's some stuff where you're just like this, and you're hovering over the model and it just doesn't film great. It ends up taking you 8 hours to shoot a 5-minute video or something on something that's really you can easily just talk about. First thing I want to get out of the way is there's going to be problems, right? Like that's part of the fun for me, or what motivates me to scratch build. Not to mention the reward that you get a unique model that nobody else has, but all the problem solving involved, which is why I think model building is great for kids or children to get into. I know there's Lego, but eventually we graduate from Lego, right? At least some of us do. And then we go into kits, and then kit bashing, detailing, photo etching, so on. And then we build a building flat or some simple subject, and then we get the bug, and then we end up building models like this. There's a lot of people that do this. I'm not the only one. And I want to encourage people to try scratch building, because this is what ends up happening if you stay with it. You end up building more complicated models that are offer greater rewards. Now, some of the rewards are getting there will require some trial and error. Like, let me just show you where I made a mistake on this model, okay? Like, if I was to just show you this, can you spot it? If you look at the roof and the pony wall. Remember how I talked about building parts proud or a little bit larger if you can, or longer? Okay, so let me just show you. So this is where the window glazing goes, right? Where this square line is. And then this back column is lined up nice that I built in. So the glazing sits in there. But the problem is how am I going to get it to line up? Like, I don't want it underneath here. I want it to go up against here, because this plane goes right down. Let's just say this is the window glazing. It goes in behind here like that, see? So the problem is this face, valence fascia, is too far out, okay? This here has to line up on this side of the line. So rather than build a whole new roof, which thank goodness I don't have to, I'll show you how I solve it, is I'll take off whatever that is. It's about 1/8 of an inch. I'll take it off from here, okay? So this pops out. And what I need to do is take off 1/8 right here. Now, one problem I'm going to have, which probably I can get away with, because I need to shift this whole roof down 1/8 of an inch, because by the time I build out this fascia and put the wainscoting on to tuck the glass in, it'll be too far out. If I cut in 1/8 and when I pack it out for the glass, it'll match up to this granite column here, or stone column, okay? Okay, so I just want to talk to you about the countertop here that's going to go on here, or the bar, whichever you wish to call it. Now, I just cut the bar table out from this drawing. I just made an extra copy on the photocopier to save the original, okay? And the reason why I do this is because I can take this now and I can check and see, because I've made adjustments or revisions to the drawing, I can check and see if it's going to fit. Okay, and I can make my adjustments now with paper. Like even if I needed to extend this bar, I could cut it and use a piece of tape just to get it so that the dry run, everything fits. Okay, and then once I'm happy with that, give or take a millimeter or so, because you can always pack the bar out with some strip on the inside or outside. You can always fix things later, right? If they're not wide enough or if they're too narrow or whatever. So I made this bar about 2 feet, which is this counter depth is approximately HO scale 2 feet. Okay. And that's just tacked to the wall, because I glued this wall in, because this wall is very important here to keep the whole project square, right? When you build with evergreen like this, you got to think that through. I like to use a minimum of 60 thou if I can for walls, because it scales out for HO pretty good at a typical 2x4 built wall, nominal, right? But it's the roof that I'm just finishing now. So once I get this fixed and in place, then I'm going to play around with some of the lights before I paint the rest of it. I'm going to have a few lights, probably one here, one in the kitchen grill area here, and then one in the bathroom. Maybe one in the back room here, so 4 maximum. And I mean, you could go on and on, right? I'm going to primarily finish the model and then move on to some of the other structures. I got some really cool other buildings I want to do. Some are more simpler. Actually, there's one that's going to be more complicated than this. The theater facade, the Hollywood Theater that I grew up going to as a kid, not far from the original BC Hydro Rail in the same area in Kitsilano. Okay, so now I'm going to build the stools as I have indicated here. There's 12 down this way and 4 down this way. And how am I going to build those? I'm going to make them out of plastic. And these are the 4 items that you need to make these stools, okay? 364 rod, 3/32 tube, 5 32 tube, and 7 32 tube. You see the corresponding numbers, 221, 223, 225, and 227. Okay, like I say, to just buy all this for a few stools, you might think it's not worth it, but you're going to use tubing. If you're getting into scratch building, you're going to go through a lot of this, okay? For downspouts, for corner, I mean, you've seen me use it, right? So you'll find out when you get into scratch building how valuable plastic tube is of every size, but only get what you need. And this is a good start here if you are starting out. And what you do is you just telescope it. All of it telescopes. Not every single piece, because there's nominal sizes in amongst them too, but you will find all the telescoping sizes within this range of tubing and rod. So this will be the pedestal, which is this 3/64 rod, and then there's 3 layers of these tubing telescoped together, which I just take some cement, put it through, and then just shove it in quick like that. And then I'm going to saw cut these and make a little jig. I'm going to cut, you know, like 20 or so of these little discs, and then glue them down on a piece of sheet, and then clean them up, sand them to make these little stools right here. Okay. Okay, so I want to show you how I cut these cushion seats for the stools, and they need to be even. It's a challenge to cut tubing or dowel so that when you cut the cylinders off, I need at least 20. Well, I'm going to cut 20 anyway. I need 16, I think. I always like to cut a few extras, right, when you're doing multiple parts. But I want to keep the cut even all around, as close as I can. I left a little bit extra. Like the actual cushions will be a little bit thinner than this 1/8 balsa wood spacer here as I push it against that backstop. Now what I'm going to do is I just put it in here, and this jig is made up just on my cutting jig, but I just C8'd a couple pieces of maple here, okay, to this board. You can do this 101 different ways, but I just spot CA, and I'll pop it with a chisel later. You can see there. And what I do is I pop this balsa wood spacer in like that, just like this one here, but it's fixed. That way I can get my blade in there as a guide, okay? And to keep my blade vertical, I use a piece of maple squared off like that. I push this against the blade, so it's against those spacers there, see? All right? And then this is what I do. Okay, and this spacer just pops out, and I have my little seat cushion. Okay. That ensures that the little cylinder that you just cut is square, right? You'll never get it square if you don't jig it up. Okay, so the stools, here they are. That's the tubing, right? Those three sizes that were glued, right, telescopically, and then I insert number 221 364 rod into the hole, which was the smallest tube. So you get a nice straight square fit on the end of the stool seat, right? That's the reason for that. It just makes everything nice and square. And even if they are out a little bit, like in terms of their thickness, I just tweak them up with a little board sander, you know, just by eye. Just give them a little rub or two, right? With some 220 or whatever, around 300 grit 220 or so. And then I'll just round them off a bit. They're really just very simple seats or stools. I was thinking of adding a little more detail, just a rib around the outside with some super fine rod, but you don't really have to, I don't think. But like I say, that's at the discretion of the modeler. So. Okay, so I just want to quickly show you how to roll a disc, like to put trim on. Okay, so you can see that these are the stools, right? We've come this far now, and I'm just going to add this little detail here. Now, usually these stools had 3 ribs, but I'm not doing that in HO. So, I would probably, but not in HO. I just want to have just a little signification of a rib on the stool. Otherwise, it's just a boring little, you know, pedestal or whatever. But so I just start the really small rod, the smallest rod that you can get or use, and I just pin it with glue on the end. I just start it and just lay them all out. It goes quick, and then I just roll it. I just take some glue like this, right, and I just roll the disc. So I just cleaned up the top of this countertop as you know, there's a bullnose half round around each side. And so it's not going to be exactly flush, right? If you put like a straight edge across it. So I find the best way is to just scrape it. It's just finished carpenters are aware of that, right? With, you know what a scraper is, right? That's the best way to keep it nice and flat, the plane flat, and to scrape the edges down. And then I can just give it a couple of strokes. That's good. And you can see the countertop there with a little bit of a bullnose on it. Cleans it up nice. Okay, so you can see that I engraved all the panels for the cement or concrete slabs, okay, expansion joints. Now, this is 60 thou thickness here, so I'm going to use number 153 just to do the curb. Okay, 60 by 60 thou. I'm just going to glue that on. I'm going to just glue it on the front side a bit first here, and then I'm going to wrap it around the corners and go around the back. And what I did was I just tacked this on for a second here, is this particular sheet right here, and then this strip, like it looks like this, like a cross section. So here's the sidewalk, here's the building here, wall, like the pony wall here on the diner, and then the sidewalk, right, which is 60 thou. Well, there's two layers, right, with a strip there. Now I'm adding a strip here, right? But what I did was, like, I'll do a larger section of it, is I rounded off the corner here of the sheet first, not this piece, but just here the sidewalk, right? Rounded it off, and then I'm gluing on a pair of square 60 by 60 thou on the end for the curb, so it'll have a little bit of a built-in reveal there, or engraving, because, you know, that's the way they do cement sidewalks, at least around here anyway. And so it's just nice to have those kind of details, so that when you're looking at your sidewalk, right, you got your expansion joints here, and then you also got an expansion joint running here when you add this strip in. Okay, so I just want to touch on this part quick. I was going to leave it out, but I think it's important, and it has to do with, you know, concrete slab upheaval, you know, from weather. Now, I've heard it said that, oh, you can't do certain things in plastic, and that's just not true. You can do anything in plastic, and any an accomplished modeler knows that, right? Any surface, any texture can be done in plastic if they learn how to model. So I wanted to show you some heaving here. Like, notice here, okay, I'll just turn the light off, this left light, so you can see the shadow a bit better. Okay, so see the heaving of the slab there? That's just simulated with like 20 thou, and then sanded, you know, stroked a few times with some 60 grit just to thin down, paper thin one end, and then just flood it with some cement, and it'll just melt right into the plastic surface, and you'll have a heaving effect. You can scrape this down too, you know, with a number 18 style wedge blade to enhance it, or to bevel that down even more. Very easy, right? So you'll see, I'll just move down, I'll just show you one quick. So here's one that's done without anything. This is all one level, but it's just been scribed like I just showed you previously, and then it's just scraped down a bit, right? I mean, an HO scale, that's a good almost inch or two. That's quite a bit of heaving right there. Now on this one here, I just scraped off some of this overspray paint. I'll just show you how I do it. I just take some cement like this, and I put a good flood on there. And in this case, I'm going to use 10 thou, okay? All right? And you can see it here, and I'm just going to lay it on. I'm going to into that flood, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold that end down a bit, just to work this end down some right here. this feathered edge down tight. And then when this is set, like it just goes flush to the next slab here. You can rescribe that with 1 or 2 strokes with a dental pick. And there you have it. See, you have the heaving of the concrete slab. So, you know, you don't need to use plaster for everything. Like, that's fine if you want to, but you can do everything. And I've proven that. If you cycle back on our videos so far, I have demonstrated that everything is achievable with plastic. Okay, so you can see the framework of the top double hung window frame is in already. Okay. It's fiddly work. It's hard to film because you're always moving hands in the way and stuff, but anyone that's done this knows that. I don't mind doing it. Like, if you don't like doing this kind of thing, then you just won't do it. But these are custom windows, so if you want custom windows, you got to scratch build them. And it's not that hard, like, once you get into it. I mean, I just take a piece like that, and then I just make a mark, and I usually cut it just a hair larger. Better too large than short, and if it doesn't fit, I just nibble it off with my number 18 blade. And if I really need to, I just stroke it once or twice with a nail file, and then I just use the tweezers to drop it in dry fit. Drop it in, and then put a little touch of glue, and she's good to go, right? And then I just use this to square it up while it's still movable. Once you get into it, you'd be surprised how you can bang off windows. Anyway, those look pretty good. I'll do the back side too, for these. Whereas the window, the bathroom window, is similar. I might leave it. If it's fully up, you won't be able to tell. So just put glazing on the top pane, not the bottom. So this is kind of a burgundy red color that I'm going to spray the bar counter with, and I'll be using the same color on my brick as well, because I want to mirror this color than the brick on the outside and the inside of the bar color. That's the way I think my colors. Okay, and this is my Vega 3000, my backup, my Omni 5000, if I mentioned. There, see that? That's a nice color right there. Nice thin, super thin, right? It's the way you want it. Yeah, my Omni 5000, I just wore the tip out after 20 years. I'm surprised it even lasted that long. And it's interchangeable with this Vega 3000. I think they're made by Badger originally. I don't know if they still are. But this is siphon feed, but this is a good airbrush with lots of miles left. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to cut in this countertop. This is the color from the painting. There. See how thin I applied that? What's the rush, right? You don't want to cover it all in one go because you miss opportunities. Like, you miss opportunities of other colors working for you. If your paint is going on and it's looking like a wash almost, that's a good thing because your paint will go a long ways. You'll be economical with your paint. You won't have to worry about blotches or it going on too opaque. Your airbrush will never clog because IPA cleans, even though it suspends the pigment and atomizes it. It also cleans the airbrush as it's flowing through, especially in the thin state, right? And when you build it up, you just get, like, you don't lose any detail that you model, and you can control the color shade. You might like what you see. Like, remember how I said learn and process and be carefree? So you're learning all the time when you're applying, okay? I'm going to cut in a little bit of this green because I want to get some of it. This is thinned quite heavily. I'd say probably 70% IPA, 75%, 25% pigment, and it's loads of coverage. Like I say, that's one of the advantages of the airbrush, right? Blow some of this debris off first. I'm going to cut in a little bit of this wainscoting. It's already got a pin wash on it, so you can lay this on really light this way, and you might like it just like that. I actually quite like that. The umber wash and then the green over top. You'd be surprised too when you have a good compressor and you can get turn the pressure up and then do lines like this. It's a big fat needle, right? I don't need a little needle. And that way the pressure will compensate for that because it's got pressure behind it. It'll push through a smaller orifice or opening around the needle within the orifice tip, right? And then you can cut in like that. You don't get much overspray. I'm not worried about this here on the sidewall. I'm just going to put washes over that once I mask that. That'll act as extra. I don't care about the shade or that color or what it does showing through. I hope it does something. And I like to carry my paint like this with buildings and scenery and weathered subjects. You want paint bleed, color bleed. You can cover it up with an opaque covering, or you can let it show through and you might get a look or a color shade that you'll never be able to achieve otherwise. Okay, so that looks pretty good there for now. And then, maybe I'll cut in a bit more here. And notice how close in I get too. Right? Let out less paint then. That'll be good.